If Christ is king, how should the Christian consider the kingdoms of this world? What does the Bible teach us about human authority and what it means to love our neighbors and our enemies? Before we render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, let's know what it means to render unto God what is God's. This is the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, the modern prophetic voice against war and empire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute and part of the Christians for Liberty Network. I have been so busy. The election cycle this year has been crazy, and personal stuff, and just a lot of live streams and things that I'm actively doing, and I just haven't had time to sit down and finish recording any of my regular solo episodes yet, and I got some good stuff in the works. But for this week, I wanted to give you guys some content after taking already 1 week off. And so I'm going to be playing for you actually a couple selections of clips. The first one is going to be a couple highlights from the LCI live stream that we did on the night of the election. And there were some good things that came up in there, good back and forth about tariffs and why those are harmful. There was some explanations I gave around why I had decided to vote for Trump, but why I was not going to not be quiet in my criticism of him, even if he won. And then I also want to play for you some of the conversation I had on a recent X Spaces, where I talked about the morality of the non-aggression principle and how we use the non-aggression principle as a guide, but we don't deviate from it or violate it necessarily when we are trying to engage in politics and trying to do harm reduction, trying to find the best path forward. So it's kind of like a smorgasbord, a buffet of just different clips of conversations I've had over the past couple weeks from different live streams and different spaces. And so I think that you guys will like it. It should be interesting. I will, of course, have links to the full conversations in the show notes, and I will talk to you then on the other side.
Which is more embarrassing, voting for Mitt Romney or voting for Trump?
Mitt Romney, of course. I mean, at least Trump has some scruples that I think are at least interesting. Yeah. I mean, he is talking a lot about no taxes on things, and I think that's probably what I find interesting.
What's a tariff?
Listen, I'm not saying that he is absolutely pure in his no taxes, because a tariff is a tax, absolutely. But the idea, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I want to get to later after I say this one thing, is the idea of a tariffs-only economy.
Yeah.
Which we're still paying for those things.
Matthew, I don't think you realize this, but we actually have an expert on tariffs ready to join our chat.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh, if only.
If only. I'm going to bring him in. If you guys don't know who Jack Lloyd is, you're going to know very soon in the nenext 15 minutes after we're done. Hey, Jack, how's it going? Hey. I don't know if you realize, but I tried 3 times to segue you in because I didn't tell Matt what we were doing.
I think that
we are being guided. Listen, just like Abiar Malay's hair, we are being guided by the spontaneous hand of the market here on this stream. Like when we say the green room is open and unscripted, I can't stress to you how unscripted this is.
How unscripted it is.
I even tried to script it.
By the way, thanks for all those jokes and questions that you sent me, Jacob. I appreciate that. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Hey, Jack, I appreciate you being here. And Matt, I want to talk about this because it's been kind of the thing in the last, 2 weeks maybe, that Trump is like, hey, we should have a tariff-only economy. We had it about 110 or so years ago.
It was so great back in the 1800s when we had a tariff-only country.
Yeah.
It was fantastic back then. We had steel mills. Yeah. And we had all kinds of things going on.
It seems to me, and I'll make the like.
That's not the only time I'm going to do a Trump impression.
Nope, it won't be. That's why I have you here. I will say that there is a poor man's appeal to, or the common man appeal to this idea for a number of reasons. One is instead of income taxes, you only pay taxes on what you spend. And also that soaks the rich a little bit more, so that'll satisfy the progressives. So the rich people buy more, and therefore they're happy because Elon Musk has to pay more in taxes simply because he wants to consume. It also discourages a consumer economy. There's all kinds of different reasons why tariffs are attractive to people. Jack,
So
you're grinning here. You're like, I can take all these down, and I know you can. And I'm only trying my best to steelman the position a lot of people have. Why is Matthew wrong to like Trump for this reason?
Wow, that happened quickly.
There are many reasons to not like what he's doing, but the tariffs thing's always interesting to dissect because people automatically assume that there's just one layer to anything with economics, right? And that's always, I think, the Achilles heel for the average person is they only look at the immediate, but never the and then what, and then what, and then what. And so when it comes to the tariffs proposition, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. There's the reality of what Trump can do. He's just the president. He doesn't control a Congress. He can't just go unilaterally change the 16th Amendment. So there's what he has the capacity to do and his history and, what he might likely do. And then there's just the economic side of things and what's going on there. So when he talks about tariffs, just off the bat, is it likely that he is individually able to completely abolish the agency, completely get rid of all these regulations and completely eliminate the income tax unilaterally and all of Congress is going to go along with this or enough, to get it passed and all that stuff? That would be very unlikely, right? So realistically, what would happen? We would have, like we had before, he's going to successfully pass tariffs. And of course, he's going to be encouraged by people like before he had a board member who was in steel who said, you got to add the steel tariffs. And so there's going to be pressures for that. But the idea that he's going to unilaterally take down the income tax and all these other regulations, stuff like that, is kind of silly. But
do you have any hope that there's a Ron Paul in the works to help audit or end the Fed?
No, I mean, we look at things realistically, right? Like Ron Paul doesn't tweet. He's 89. He's already on the decline, physically. He has to be carried around, on a private airplane, doesn't fly, commercial, anything like that. So that's kind of silly. He's well past that age where he would be able to do those kinds of things. So it's I don't think that's a material thing. And most of what people have seen are just memes, right? So they take the memes that are made, whether it's by Elon or sharing from somebody else, and they take that as reality. But of course, there's a big difference between
Jack.
Him and me.
All we have are the memes, man. That's all we got.
I know.
The greatest meme to rule them all.
There's no one, like, you're sitting there in the ballot and you're like, okay, Kamala's like, and Chase is like, and then Trump is like, okay, I know he's probably not going to deliver on 99.9 or 100% of the things he's promised, but man, at least the memes are dope. I mean, that's.
You have to do the economics of the unmeme. Now, you got to look at both memes that are there in front of you and the ones that are not in front of you.
Yes. I haven't had a chance to answer this question about 4 years of Harris, but part of the reason why I voted Trump is that although he's not anti-war, he's compared to Harris. Like, I think 4 years of Harris, I feel like every election cycle, people are like sounding the alarm about World War III, but I don't know that the world can survive 4 more years of Harris, or maybe it can, but it's going to get much uglier, I think. She seems to be leaning into every, usually presidents will do their drone strikes and then they pick like one country to saber rattle with. Harris is like, what if I just saber rattle with all of them all at once?
And like in pokers, there's tells. If you see someone wearing a cross around their neck, you might assume they're a Christian, Star of David, Jewish. If you see someone wearing the Cheney family around their neck.
Yeah. No,
this doesn't do much to make me feel good.
Listen, nothing has really changed for me. Like, I used to be a Democrat, like a Bernie Sanders anti-war leftist, and my rule was just always vote against the Cheneys. So I'm just voting my principles here.
Your original principle.
Yeah.
Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Lon Cheney.
Yeah.
Pick a Cheney. Yeah.
Wow. Pick a Cheney.
Yeah, it's a good principle.
Any
War
Cheney.
sucks.
Yeah.
Well, at the very least, like, Trump's not anti-war, but at least the right, like, pretends to be anti-war and is marginally better on stuff. I mean, they're not great on the Israel one, but and here's the problem. Like we were talking about tariffs earlier, but it's like I don't know what the lesser evil is here, because it's like on one hand, tariffs are bad, they're taxes, but the tariffs are an outgrowth of this isolationist, like nationalist sentiment, which has its drawbacks, but it would sort of lean into America becoming more of a republic again and less of an empire, versus Harris would continue, there'd be no tariffs, I guess. There'd probably be other taxes, but there would be a continuation of the empire and a sort of like, at least a continuing of the sort of like, military status quo. So I don't know. I mean, that's at least the stuff going through my head when I'm and why I'm inclined to care a little bit more about this election. I mean, I get, like, we named this the most important election of our lifetime in kind of like the troll lettering, which I get. But like the boy who cried wolf eventually saw a wolf. So I mean, at some point, and I also think, I think Dave Smith made this point in one of his recent episodes that, like, this is kind of one of the features of democracy, right? Like, it is kind of just ever rising stakes. So it is like, it's a meme, but it's also kind of true that every election is kind of the most important because the government just keeps growing bigger and bigger. So the stakes keep getting higher and higher. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I am not particularly high on any candidate winning, pretty clearly. I don't think that there's really any predominant.
If they could all lose, I would go for that. But
really, the true losers of this election are us, the people of this country, because there's almost no outcome that's a net that I feel is like going to be a net good. There are going to be marginal improvements in various ways. I do think that there are ways in which a Trump victory could have marginal improvements, but they're not universal, and it is not clear to me that they are on net good. But similarly, I mean, I feel a little more confident, perhaps, that Harris administration is an overall net bad. But it doesn't. There are some things that could theoretically be on, perhaps a bit of a net good. It's unclear whether that really even gets close to outweighing the potential net bads. So it's like there's no victory here. So the question is like, well, what are we supposed to do with that? And I think that there's just like that. This is why I think it's just these are events that allow us to point the finger and say, this is the man. I mean, and using that kind of phraseology to suggest like, these are the problem people. These are the principles that we need in order to actually make progress. And we have I like to say, we have every tool that, God has provided us with a world that is chock full of ability to create win-win situations. And yet humans manage to completely find new ways to screw it up. And they find ever increasing ways of screwing it all up. And it's incredible. But it's incumbent on us to point out what those are. Like that this is not the way you build peace and prosperity. Mm-hmm. This is, I like, what are our predictions, or what is mine? Well, like, do you like what? Oh, I'm going to be so happy if inflation is not 10% and instead is 6%. Like, I mean, great. Okay, at least it's that much better, I guess, or something.
But I confess, I will be happy if that happens.
Right.
I got 8 mouths to feed, including my own. I get your point, though. I totally get your point. But if I could have less pain, if the beatings would go down to once a week as opposed to every day,
like you're okay. Point well taken. Like, it could be the case that, an act of policy could make it possible for inflation to go down from like 10% to 6%. Guess what? There are, you could make the case potentially that some of the policies that have happened in the past 2 years did result in kind of that happening. And yet we're still mad at the government, and rightfully so, for them still promoting policies that continue to build inflation. So is it really that much better? because we still should be it still should be a problem. So I don't mean to like get on your case about it or anything per se, but like,
no, I don't
get
feel
where I'm coming at there. Like, yeah. So it's like, sure, yeah, I'm like, it's on the margin better, but it's still a net bad,
Well, can I ask, like, what do you make? I obviously like. Listen, I'll admit it was a fanboy moment. I saw a chain of tweets where people are tweeting at Elon about Ron Paul being part of a Department of Government Efficiency, and Ron Paul says, like, heck yeah, let's talk and let's do it. And so I'm just like, okay, what do I got to lose, right? Like, one of these two people are going to win. The one is at least like, maybe it's a lie or it's not going to happen, but they're dangling Ron Paul in front of me. So like, whatever, I'm going to take a swing at that. But let's say that doesn't happen. And there's a fair chance of, well, Ron Paul is really old. The idea of him getting back involved in government at this age
89 years old.
Yeah.
Dude, why would you put him through that hell? Like,
I mean, listen, I mean, part of me is like, again,
it doesn't take long to
looking
just say, end it, done. And like, he only needs to be there for like, what, a week?
Right. Government efficiency. Okay. He's like, actually, you should name this the Department of Government deficiency, or it's just like, it's everything. Like, it's just get rid of it.
Government efficiency is an oxymoron.
Right. Exactly. But but isn't it at least a net positive in the slow march towards liberty that like libertarian ideas are being injected into the conversation in a way that I haven't really seen in my lifetime, except coincidentally, like a little bit when Ron Paul was a really big thing when he was running. But it's like, again, these guys aren't perfect. Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, they're not libertarians, but they're at least like, I don't know, like they're more than a standard deviation improved from kind of the status quo that I'm used to being in our government, let alone in the Republican Party. So it's like, I don't know, like, is that a hope for like where we're at as a culture that, and maybe as like the liberty movement, that libertarians and libertarian ideas have to be appealed to somewhat?
Yeah, I think so. I'll take hope where I can get it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't pan out, well, then I'm still going to keep doing what I need to do.
Yeah, I don't like promote the conversation. That's great. Just don't have expectations that they're actually going to come through. I mean, I expect, when Ron has the opportunity to make a positive impact for liberty through just talking, that he's going to do it.
Right.
Like, so
and that's all I'm saying. It's like, and if Trump's in office and Elon's in his orbit, I'm like, listen, like, is it going to usher in, Ancapistan? No, but it's, I don't know, like, there's at least something there that's materially different than I think in most other elections, even though I know that Trump will govern as a statist and do all sorts of things that I am going to continue to call out. I also think it's interesting that, sorry, not interesting. I think it's one of the few things that he's talked about that I think he will do, because it's such an easy thing to do, is freeing Ross Ulbricht, which I think is, another thing that went into I think the calculus for a lot of libertarians this year, because he actually said he was going to free Ross last term and signed the papers, but then the I guess like the Attorney General slow walked it because he was on his way out. But he said he's going to do it on day one. Now maybe he's lying, but in terms of like all the things he said he's going to do, like he can't abolish the income tax in one fell swoop, and he can't.
I like one fell swoop. That's good.
One fell swoop, yeah. He can't, just bring all the troops. Even if he wanted to, he can't just bring all the troops home, the day he gets into office. But it doesn't take much to sign the pardon papers for Ross, and I mean that would be I think, sure, it's one person, but I think the symbolic impact of Ross being freed. Rossi was, basically a political prisoner because he did what we talked about. He created a free market thing and had his life ruined for it.
Let's see him pardon Julian Assange too. Maybe we let's see.
Well, I agree. That's been brought up to him too. Yeah, and I mean he should have done this stuff last time, so it's not like he gets a pass.
See that's kind of like when you let me pull a Jacob Winograd here and quote a little scripture at you. If you can be trusted with a little, you can be trusted with much.
Yes.
Right? Was he trustworthy with a little?
I mean, it just compared to what though, right?
Compared
like
to
even,
what? But like, this is where you point the finger and say you're the man. Like this is. I
get where you're coming from. I guess I don't know. See, to me, I'm like a hopeless optimist. I'm like, you know what? Like, even if I'm overplaying the little tiny grain of sand that's like a tiny win, it's like we don't get much. Like in the liberty movement, most of the wins we get are like we convince people that libertarianism is true, and it's like, great, welcome to the losing team. Right?
I should tell you on Sunday I was at a soccer game and sitting beside a parent who's a friend of mine, parent of it was my daughter's soccer game, and there was another parent there, and he goes, so Doug, what are the libertarians going to do on Tuesday? And I just was like, lose. Like, like we're real just good at missing a bit. It's like, well, we're gonna lose. Like, what do you mean? Like, and a lot of people, I know what they mean. It's like, well, who are you gonna vote for the libertarian? You don't have somebody, whatever. And even though we typically do, actually always do, I suppose. And anyway, that's kind of the I would say in some sense that's the point you're making, Jacob, is that like, we can get wins in the major, well, at least one major party to some extent. Maybe the Democrats can offer something like criminal justice reform. They used to be about that. So there's these wins of influence, and to me that sounds like one of the approaches that some people in the Libertarian Party are making. It's like, how can the LP and its momentum in some capacity influence one of the candidates?
Doug, criminal justice reform from the candidate that joked about smoking weed in college with Howard Stern.
Trust me.
Wow.
It's like,
no,
I get it. Joe Biden is one of the reasons we need this in the first place. No, but they used to be about it. Like before Biden and Kamala. Yeah, no. They used to be. No, and Republicans were like, no, we don't need that. We just put people in prison. And people just need to obey the law. And if you don't argue with the police officer, and because if you don't argue, if you just submit, they're not going to kill you. That's usually
what an argument. What an argument. Oh,
you realize that's worse, right?
Yeah.
So I made a post. I was quote tweeting dissident media. They said, yeah, government infringes on your liberties, but some governments infringe on your liberties less than others. So I quote tweeted that, and I added to it, and I said, as an ANCAP, I judge all things. And I'm saying, so as an ANCAP, like as an anarcho-capitalist, which is, I think you and I would agree, that's like it's a philosophy of law, it's a legal theory. It's not like a holistic worldview necessarily. That's why I'm a Christian as well. I don't make anarcho-capitalism my religion, but insofar as I am an ANCAP, I judge things through the filter of the non-aggression principle and private property rights. And while the state is a fundamental distortion and violation, and of these natural rights, which I'm sure you would agree with, right? The state is the antithesis of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle and private property rights. Everything the state does, it does through fiat or coercion or the threat of force in some way. If the free market is based on subjective value and people exchanging services and goods based on believing that they can, trade things that they have different value for and end up in a better place based on their own subjective value judgments, which means that ideally in a free market, it seems like everyone is benefiting from the interaction and it's consensual. The state is, again, like at every layer of that description of how free market interactions work, the state is flipping that, and it's involuntary, and it's not based on subjective value judgments of individuals, but rather it's based on central planning, it's based on fiat, like we said. And so those interventions distort the market, they distort the realm of human interaction, they distort law, and so that's what I meant by that. And then I added, but that doesn't mean that all state interventions or actions are equally harmful or equal in their importance. And you then responded saying that you disagree because you think I'm bringing in, at least even if I'm not like abandoning the NAP in this analysis, that I'm bringing something else in to make the statement that not all violations of the NAP are equal. So do you want to maybe expound upon that, your initial comment there, what you meant by the NAP doesn't provide us the ability to, like your example was stealing a penny and murder are both illegal. Those are both violations of the non-aggression principle of libertarian ethics. But you would say that we can't, from self-ownership or the NAP alone, determine which one of those is worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, all I was saying was, and I certainly agree with you that I agree with you in principle, or I suppose in general, that we can certainly say that some states are worse than others. Just, taking the hypothetical case of a minarchist state that only, intervenes in, courts and police and, all the stuff that, minarchists want the state to do. That state, I think you and I would both agree, would be a better place to be than, North Korea, right? We would both agree with that, I think, in general. All I was claiming was that you actually can't get to that conclusion purely by referencing legal theory, because legal theory only deals with it's a binary in the sense that an action is either illegal or legal. That's all that the legal theory is trying to do. It's telling you, okay, here's the set of here's the sum total of all possible actions that people could take. There's either category A, illegal actions, or category B, legal actions, and that's all the theory is trying to do, right? So my point was only that, not to even really disagree with the thrust of your argument, which was that you could make the case that a Trump presidency would be better than a Harris presidency or something like that. Just that I don't think that you're getting to that conclusion through the NAP, which was kind of what I interpreted your comment as, which was, like you said, I look through the filter of the NAP and through property rights. Therefore, I'd say a Trump presidency is less bad than a Harris presidency would be. And I just disagree with that because, as I said, it's kind of, I see legal theory as a binary. Either actions are illegal or they're not. And that's all that you can really derive from the non-aggression principle, is that you ought not initiate conflicts over scarce resources. And if you were to try to, make some kind of statement about, say, X action is worse than Y, you are, by necessity, maybe smuggling in would be the right word, some other unstated moral assumptions about action that isn't just covered by the legal theory, if that makes sense.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that selection of clips. I should be back next week with regular episodes, and I look forward to that and getting kind of back to normal here. Other than that, I don't have much for you guys. I hope that you are doing well. Election cycles and seasons are crazy, and there's a lot of conversations, a lot of fear, a lot of excitement. Try to keep yourself grounded in Christ and remember that He is in control. He alone is Savior. So that's all I have for you guys for this week's episode. I'll talk to you again next week. Live at peace. Live for Christ. Take care.
The Biblical Anarchy Podcast is a part of the Christians for Liberty Network, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute. If you love this podcast, it helps us reach more with a message of freedom when you rate and review us on your favorite podcast apps and share with others. If you want to support the production of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, please consider donating to the Libertarian Christian Institute at biblicalanarchypodcast.com, where you can also sign up to receive special announcements and resources related to biblical anarchy. Thanks for tuning in.